This is Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Montgomery Mosaic features topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. Here now is your host, Deborah Milo.
Well, good morning, Montgomery County, and thank you for joining us for the February edition of Montgomery Mosaic. I'm your host, Deborah Milo. I'd like to take a moment and wish everyone a very happy Valentine's Day, and to let you know that not only is February Black History Month, it's also American Heart Month. And the African American Health Program is offering diabetes and heart health classes at two locations, White Oak Community Recreation Center on Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m., and at Ross Body Community Recreation Center on Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Now, to get more information or to enroll, call 240-777-1833, or you can even email at aahp@mcfarlandassociate.com. That's aahp@mcfarlandassociate.com. And the telephone number again is 240-777-1833. Well, on today's show, we're going to talk about the Time to Build, a capital improvement project that's been funded and built during the 12 years that County Executive Isaiah Leggett has been in office. And here to talk with us about that is David Dice, and he's the director of the Montgomery County Department of General Services. David, I'd like to welcome you to Montgomery Mosaic. Thank you for coming on today's show.
It is my delight to be here. Thank you.
David is also a good colleague of mine, so we've been having a really good conversation in the green room, also known as the cafeteria here at Radio 1.
It's not very green.
It's not very green, is it? You know, there's much I hope to cover today, but before we begin, I want you to share just a little about yourself and what inspired you to a career in government, specifically in general services, because, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know everything.
Well, I think like most folks, you evolve into a career. I was sharing with a teenage son of a friend of mine the other day that they didn't know what they wanted to do in college, what they wanted to study. I said, don't worry about it. I don't know anybody who's doing today.
That's right.
What they studied in college.
None of us are.
Well, I'm the same way. Actually, I always wanted to be an architect, so I've actually returned to some of that.
Nice.
I had an uncle who talked me out of it because he didn't think you'd make much money as an architect. So I went into public service and proved that you don't make much money doing that. But I started out in engineering, evolved into procurement, and worked in the procurement field for 20 years, and also did a lot of what I do now in general services when I was working in Virginia. So it was a natural step to come here to Montgomery County when the county executive was assuming office, and after about a year running the procurement office, he created the Department of General Services. General Services is exactly what the title entails. We do a little bit of everything. We exist primarily to serve other county departments in helping them accomplish their missions. When we build a fire station, it's to help the fire service do their work better. When we build a health facility, it's to help HHS do its job better. When we renovate or build libraries, it's to help them. But ultimately, and what drives me and my staff is the commitment to public service, that we're here ultimately to help the residents of Montgomery County. That may sound corny, but it is really what drives us.
That's right. That's right. It's not corny. It's what drives all of us, and that's the goal. That's the goal, to make sure that we're serving our internal and our external clients to the best of our ability.
Absolutely.
I wanted to focus on 4 key areas, and I want to talk about fiscal responsibility, economic development, environmental stewardship, and something I'd like to call taking care of the basics. Now, what that means necessarily, we'll find out. Okay. So let's start with fiscal responsibility. Now, you know, we're in a time where other jurisdictions are pretty much cutting back. Talk a little bit about what's driving the county's decision to build aggressively during what we're calling or looking at as the Great Recession, from what I read about sociologists write.
Well, it really was the Great Recession, but I'm going to First, not because he pays my salary, but I'm going to brag on my boss a little bit.
Absolutely.
County Executive Leggett has been very bold in his leadership.
Yes.
And he's made some decisions that a lot of others would shy away from. And when we were coming into the Great Recession, as you say, and it really was the second worst economic downturn this county's ever experienced.
That's right.
And but we also what others see as a harmful situation, he and I agreed was an opportunity. And so we saw that building was going down, but you're still surrounded by contractors and workers who now have less to do. So there was a greater opportunity to attract good competitive contractors. Material costs were going down. Mm-hmm. Typically in robust times, in flush times, everyone's got more than enough work to do. Materials are hard to get. Prices are high. Well, when in a recession, it's just the opposite. So,
that's true.
So County Executive Leggett saw that there was an opportunity here because typically government, when it's going out for bid and doing its contracting work,
right.
A lot of contractors are not used to working with the government, and so they shy away from that. In tough financial times, everybody will work for anybody.
This is true.
We actually had the benefit, and we usually get good contractors working on our work, but in this case, during that recessionary time, we got everybody interested in our work. There was a period of time where Montgomery County was the only people building anything in Montgomery County there for a year or two. So we got a lot of benefit from the competition and the lower prices to be much more aggressive. While other jurisdictions were ceasing their capital activities and growth, Montgomery County actually sort of hammered down and accelerated.
I like how you said that Mr. Leggett was able to really be a visionary and see beyond the recession. You know, he sensed exactly what needed to be done and was able to do it in a way that has just continued to push us forward in the county.
That's right. We're all very conscious. Have the public doesn't always appreciate this.
Right.
But we are very conscious of the fact that we are spending other people's money.
Oh, yes, we are.
And so we have an obligation, and we feel that obligation to spend it wisely. The county executive has absolutely done a champion job of bringing this county through this tough recessionary period, and in the midst of that, actually growing the county. We didn't survive,
right.
We
thrived.
And it's because of his leadership. So we benefited greatly by that advantage, that strategy, and actually stretched what dollars were available to a great advantage.
How did the Smart Growth Initiative benefit the county financially?
Well, Smart Growth Initiative is another one of those examples of bold strategies on the part of the executive. And if I can, indulge me with a little bit of history. Anyone who's lived in the county for a long period of time knows the history that it's grown from the district out over the years.
Right.
And what was once the outer boundaries of development over the course of a few decades suddenly becomes surrounded by development. Well, that's true of the county's facilities as well. 40 years ago, when we were building light industrial maintenance facilities and the like.
When you were only what, 20?
I was
10?
7.
Okay, 7. Okay.
So we had these industrial facilities on the fringe of development. Well, 30, 40 years later, we have Metro, we have development working its way out now, and so that this area is surrounded, and we have industrial facilities right next to Shady Grove Metro Station.
Yes.
Where they don't use the Shady Grove Metro Station, we had bus maintenance facilities, we had a school food prep facility, we had a liquor warehouse, we had a fleet maintenance facility. All of these things surrounded by new townhouses, new single-family development.
Yes.
And it just made no sense. This was valuable land. Now, on top of that, these same facilities have been there for 40 years. And I needed to maintain them. To put it in perspective, Montgomery County owns over 400 buildings. totaling
That's a lot.
totaling about 10.5 million square feet.
Wow.
And I often say that if a lot of those buildings were people, they'd qualify for AARP membership. So we had these old buildings that needed to be repaired, and the option was to spend about $250 million renovating those buildings, or leverage this. Well, the executive, again, in the midst of a recession, strong leadership and visionary, he saw, why don't we leverage the value of that land and swap it or sell it and use those funds or those public-private partnership agreements, and we'll talk more about P3s later, because we've since gone on to be very successful in that area. But we leveraged these to create new facilities out of the way, further out, and in an area where they're less of a hindrance to the development, and more importantly, result in what we call transit-oriented development, where we have residential houses, townhouses being constructed, some commercial and
I see. Okay.
Properties being built right next to Metro,
right,
where the population can utilize the benefits of the public transportation.
Exactly.
So it creates, and I'm probably going to step over future questions, but it results in expanding the tax base.
Right.
It results in better jobs, better places to live, and economic development for and a better standard of living for everybody. In the meantime, I'm building new facilities at a lower cost at another area, and also being able to create state-of-the-art facilities.
That's right.
Instead of one of the problems, and we do a lot of renovations, but one of the challenges with renovations is when I renovate a 30-year-old building, I have a renovated 30-year-old building. And there's certain things that you can't do that you can do with new construction. And from that, we ended up with a brand new maintenance facility that has state-of-the-art environmental design practices built into it. We ended up with a new public safety training academy, a new food service warehouse that can now meet the needs for the public school expansion 10, 20 years out. We ended up with new maintenance facilities for parks and schools that work with co-location, which is another design innovation that we've taken on. So I'm probably going to shut up here and let you answer some more questions, because I could just keep talking.
No, this is all good stuff, because and here's a novice's approach to everything that you're saying. What I see is all very practical, very wise decisions, economically sound decisions, especially when it comes to building homes and townhomes near areas of transit. That just makes sense to me.
Sure it does.
That just makes, but then again, I'm from Ohio, so.
Well, it was painfully obvious that we had become our own hindrance. The county wants to promote economic development and growth and bring more people and businesses into the county, and yet we were the big landholder standing in the way. Right. So now that we've moved out of the way, we've cleared up over 100 acres of what was light industrial development for now commercial, residential, transit-oriented development.
That's amazing to me. Good morning again, listeners, and thank you for tuning into Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL. I'm your host, Deborah Milo. Today I have the distinct pleasure of talking with David Dice, Director of the county's Department of General Services, about the Time to Build capital improvement project funded and built by the 12 years County Executive Isaiah Leggett has been in office. And David, we're talking about the Smart Growth Initiative and how it benefits the county financially. I want to also talk a little bit about the Library Refresh Program and how it's stretched capital investment dollars.
Okay, well, again, a little bit of background. Where we have, over the last 12 years, as the overall leadership of the executive, built new or major renovations of over 50 buildings. We have done about 20 or so other smaller projects that were a significant change over what people have seen before. In the prior 12 years, the county had done less than half of that amount.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. This is Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WL, and we'll take a quick break and talk more with David Dice about the county's Department of General Savers. This is Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WL, and we'll take a quick break and talk more with David Dice about the county's Department of General Savers services. So stay with us.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
Good morning. This WOL traffic and weather update brought to you by the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. Siouxland Parkway inbound a little slow after Alabama Avenue to Staten Road, although nothing reported in the way. New York Avenue is still pretty heavy as you leave northeast into northwest from North Capitol Street down toward the 3rd Street Tunnel. Southbound on 295, expect to find that very heavy now. From Benning Road down to East Capitol Street, 210 northbound is slow approaching Kirby Hill Road, but nothing reported in the way. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation invites you to take steps for cures at a walk event near you. Get started at cctakesteps.org. Now your WOL weather forecast. Clouds and sun this morning and more clouds for this afternoon, a high near 57. Rain this evening, showers overnight down to 50 for low. Tomorrow, cloudy with a slight chance of a rain shower and milder still, a high near 67. Steve Hirschhorn for 1450 AM and 95.9 FM WOL, where information is power.
And county friends, welcome back to Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL. I'm Deborah Milo, your host, and we're talking to David Dice, Director of the county's Department of General Services, about the 12 years of Montgomery County investment and capital improvement. Had a couple of technical issues, but Stan the man has definitely made it all possible for us to go forward. So thank you, Stan. David, let's finish up. Let's talk a little bit more about the Library Refresh Program.
Okay, I'm still here. So.
And that's a good thing.
Stan hasn't chased me out yet.
Me neither.
So, let's talk about the Library Refresh. This is a nationally recognized, award-winning initiative. Again, county residents are not always aware of what a leading county they live in. And a lot of the programs that we've undertaken, as other departments as well, have really been recognized nationally. And the Library Refresh Program is one of those. We have, since General Services has been around, done major renovations or new construction on a half a dozen libraries. A typical library is going to run around $35 million.
My goodness.
They're expensive.
They
and
are
let me
expensive.
tell you, since I've been here, there's nothing that I've realized more than the fact that Montgomery County loves its libraries.
Oh, yes.
Well, for that amount of money to build a brand new large library, that really limits how many libraries we can build.
It does.
Now, I'm going to brag on Parker Hamilton a little here. She was the one, as the former, recently retired director of libraries. She came up to me once into the executive and said, you know, we've got a lot of neighborhood libraries that are also threadbare and challenged and older, and they need some work too. How about instead we start looking at a program to renovate and refresh those as opposed to building new libraries? So executive, again, good solid leadership, great idea, let's explore that. So this was about 4 years ago. Well, since then this program has taken off and actually become a model not only in the county for where we're looking at with rec centers,
right,
as well as parks is looking at doing the same model for parks, but this is becoming a model nationally. We can do is spend about $2 to $3 million renovating and refreshing a local library. And in doing that, we're not only replacing carpet and paint, but we're updating ADA systems, mechanical systems. Some places, two levels of libraries, there were old elevators, or in two cases, no elevators. So we go in and modernize and refresh. Department of Libraries has introduced a lot of technology and Wi-Fi.
They have.
We go in and do that. So for about $3 million, we can go in and refresh a library, improve the lighting, make it fresh and new. I can do 12 libraries for the price of one new library.
12 libraries for the price of one. That's significant.
And I have to tell you, I'm going to brag on this. These libraries look wonderful.
Oh, I know they do.
After they're
I patronize
done,
them.
The lights are bright. The carpet is new. We replaced
Yes.
the furniture with fresh furniture.
Mhm.
The kids' areas are lively. It's just they're wonderful. They're new libraries, and talk about stretching the public dollar. It's a great strategy, and it's been a tremendous success.
You're listening to Montgomery Mosaic on Talk Radio 1450 WOL, and I'm Deborah Milo, your host. My guest today is David Dice, Director of Montgomery County's Department of General Services. And I want to shift a little bit, David, to talk about environmental stewardship. We've had such a great show. I want to make sure that we don't conclude without talking just a little bit about that and about the LEED buildings and in the installed solar panels on the roofs of many of the buildings. Can you talk about that?
The question is, can I stop talking?
Okay.
About it? So, but I'll start, and you just shut me up. Montgomery County has always had a commitment to environmental stewardship
Right.
and sustainability. And in fact, a number of years ago, the county council passed a law that requires me, as the county's developer, to every county building I build has to comply with what is known as a LEED Silver standard. Now, LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design.
I was going to ask you what it stood for.
And
Okay.
it's a program that was developed a number of years ago by the United States Green Building Council to create a standard for buildings to comply both in the private sector and public sector. And it starts off with LEED certified, then there's LEED silver, LEED gold, and LEED platinum.
So there's different levels of the LEED.
There are. And in the old days, I've been doing this for some time. In the old days, I guess what our buildings would have been LEED lead. They just,
Yeah.
we just built buildings. But this raised the consciousness, and so when all of our buildings have to be at least a LEED silver certification. To get a LEED silver certification, any LEED certification, you have to focus on locally sourced materials.
Right.
It's the larger picture. Are you getting materials that require a number of tractor trailers to drive across the country? Well, that's not helping the environment either.
That's true.
So locally sourced materials, recycled materials, recyclable materials,
True.
all of these things. And we certainly do that. But we also look at the way we position a building on a piece of property. I have to pay the county's utility bills. We control the county's utilities. And so we're very much aware of how much this county spends to light the lights and heat and cool the spaces. And so we now design buildings so that the Gaithersburg Library is a good example. It's a new library, and it is positioned so that it captures the winter sun but shields the interior space from the summer sun. Because in the winter, the sun is low, and in the summer, it's high. So we have longer eaves. We even have a large stone wall behind the checkout counter, which will absorb the sunlight in the winter as the arc of the sun passes through the sky. People don't think about those things.
That's very well thought out,
But
though.
that saves me a few degrees of heating,
Right.
and ultimately tens of thousands of dollars in utility costs. So that's an example. LEED silver. Most of the buildings we've been building over the last 5 years have achieved the LEED gold standard, which is even a higher standard.
Gold standard.
So LEED is one of the areas that we're very focused on. The county has actually recently adopted the International Green Construction Code. Now, as a construction code, it's got a higher requirement for compliance. When the county's Department of Permitting Services was looking at the IGCC's requirements, they came to us and said, well, what kind of an impact is this going to have on county construction? So we looked at the IGC requirements based upon the sustainable building practices that we already had in place, and I'm proud to say that we didn't have to make any change at all.
Well, that's impressive.
Because the leadership, and the county executive has stressed this greatly in the way we design our buildings. We have vegetated roofs. The David F. Bone Maintenance, Equipment Maintenance and Transportation Operations Center, affectionately known as MTOC. For an industrial facility, it's actually LEED Gold certified. It has a vegetated roof. And in fact, the design standards we used for that building were so innovative that the state agencies permitting environmental standards Had never seen those things before.
Okay, I want to make sure that our listeners understand what a vegetated roof is.
It's plants on the roof.
That's what I thought.
There
Well,
you
you
go.
and I know that, but everyone may not know
it's
that.
It's not vegetables on the roof. It's vegetation on the roof.
It's vegetation on the roof.
Yeah, no one's picking carrots. But it is it's a green roof, but technically a white roof can be a green roof. So that's why we call them vegetated roofs.
Right,
so
right.
These are tremendous innovations that where we're at MTOC, as I said, we actually harvest the water that is collected on the vegetated roof, run it through an ultraviolet system, and use that in the water used in the toilets and the urinals.
These things are all so innovative that these are the things you don't see.
Right. Yeah.
These are the things you don't see. So this is a good thing. I want to ask you one more question, and I want to talk about snow removal costs. Of course. Now, I seem to remember County Executive Leggett mentioning that snow removal costs are $1 million per inch, which really was very surprising.
Well, it's a big county.
It is a big county. So talk about what investments have been made to make snow plowing more effective and still efficient.
Well, once again, while we're dealing with a large recession on some areas that we can take advantage of, at the same time, other costs are going up. We need to save a lot of money as well, and the county executive has really stressed this. I think one of the biggest things that our Department of Transportation Highway Maintenance Group has done is introduce some great technology as far as being able to plot routing of snow plows, move vehicles where they're needed most. One of the odd things about this county, as county residents here certainly know, is that the weather in Damascus can be dramatically different than the weather in Silver Spring.
Yes, it can.
In fact, this past winter, the winter we're trying desperately to get out of right now, has been that, where we've had rain in Bethesda, we've had an inch of snow or 2 inches of snow in the northern part of the county. So technology has been a big help. County executive has authorized, and we have procured 344 new snow plows.
Okay, good.
And again, I'm going to brag on the fleet staff a little bit as well. In these snow emergencies, even Snowmageddon a few years ago.
I remember that.
We're all trying to push out of our memories. The fleet maintenance staff supporting the highway maintenance staff, we maintained a 98% readiness throughout that whole event. At no point were we not able to put plows out on the street. So those types of things are critical, and that's what most folks see. At the same time, in the just last few seconds that we've got, those 400 buildings I mentioned, we're just like every other property owner in Montgomery County. We have to clear our own sidewalks.
Absolutely.
So I've got contractors and staff out there shoveling sidewalks and clearing parking lots too. You can begin to understand the massive extent of the effort. That's why it's $1 million an inch.
Well, needless to say, David, we're going to have you back because this has been such an informative show, and I really appreciate you coming on today.
It's been my pleasure.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for today, folks, but I'd really like to thank my guest, David Dice, Director of the Montgomery County Department of General Services, for taking time to talk to us about the Time to Build Capital Improvement Project. And listeners, as always, thank you for tuning in today. Tune in again next month for another Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS HD2, and of course worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Till next time, be good to yourself and others, and have a great Valentine's Day.